The impudence, the audacity, the unmitigated gall of those Knuckleheads of Liberty podcasters, daring to voice opinions outside the mainstream of accepted thought. Listen if you dare. It's angry, it's funny, it's even sometimes sad, but it's always based on freedom and justice, as you will see. Here's our host, Jason McPhee.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty. We're coming at you on August 3rd, 2022. And I tell you, every day seems like we're just a little bit more into that economic abyss with Biden steering the ship. But before we get into any of the details on the show, let me introduce you to our panel. In our upper left-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. In our upper right-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California, and my name is Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. So I tell you, the inflation, aside from the whole discussion of recession, we also have, this debacle of inflation going on as well. Certainly, some of this was to be expected when you have a COVID prescription where you literally throw money into the economy and shut down production. I can't think of a more, toxic recipe for inflation. But now the big thing that Biden just won't seem to learn, he keeps thinking that the solution is more money is the way to solve inflation. And so they, unfortunately, he just got a lifeline that Joe Manchin, and maybe we could get the image up for the show. So Joe Manchin has just joined him about a week or so ago, or earlier this week, I think, on helping or committing to passing this Inflation Reduction Act. And so that's going to give him a little bit of the Build Back Better he was after, and essentially pump, some hundreds of billions more into the economy in order to just it's like aiming a fire hose of gasoline onto the problem, I guess. And this is, of course, they're saying, oh, it's no big deal. It's just going to be some corporate taxes. But that is actually just stuff that's going to raise prices of goods that are going to be passed on to individuals, which just that's literally how you get some more inflation that way. But the other issue is too that they had claimed that there won't be any tax hikes below. That was one of Biden's promises on families earning less, I believe, than $400,000. And this bill is apparently going to put taxes on families that make less than $200,000. And when you talk about around the country, that may not seem that may seem like a lot in some places, but in places like California, I mean, that's becoming almost what you need to get by the prices. I mean, the average price here of a home is around $900,000 now. So, I mean, this is just, insanity on stilts where this economy is going. But Inflation Reduction Act, let's see if that's where this actually goes. In fact, they actually had a Penn Wharton budget model. They had said that I think in the long term, the inflation that they pegged from this will essentially have little impact one way or the other on it. But in the short term, they predict, much as we're talking about, this may actually increase inflation a little bit. And it's just literally pumping some money into the economy when that's clearly not the remedy that we need. What do you guys think about this?
I think they ought to stop naming these acts the exact opposite of what they are. The Patriot Act, the Freedom Act, all these acts that they come up with are, the moniker they put on them is just exactly the opposite of what they are in reality. So maybe they ought to really call it the Inflation Increase Act, instead of sugarcoating it with such nonsense. What do you think, Leon?
Well, we know if we put more federal dollars, which has been printed which would be printed anyway, more federal dollars into the economy, we know what's going to happen. It's going to be inflationary. There's no doubt about that. Okay, but Manchin, make this deal with Chuck Schumer, and of course they have a whole bunch of stuff for West Virginia, where Manchin is from, that is going to help West Virginia. But it's nothing about a bunch of pork barrel, a bunch of pork that they have in this bill, and a lot of it is going to spend on climate change and all this other nonsense. Like if the government could do something about the fact that the climate is changing, the climate has been changing since the beginning of time, and all of a sudden they think they could stop the change. I don't know why we're trying to do that. It is so ridiculous. It's beyond belief. But the point is though, and I think I know Tim, you're right. When the government say we are here and we are the government and we are here to help you, this is the time that they should run, okay? Because the thing that they name these bills, they do the exact opposite, okay? This is inflation reduction, just like Tim said, is really should be inflation increase because they put in federal printed dollars into the economy, and that is nothing but inflationary.
Yeah, I'd just like to clear something up, and I know Leon uses the term inflation the same way I do, and I just try to simplify it. And I define it exactly like Leon says, is that when the government inflates the monetary amount of money in the currency and credit in the system, that's inflationary. When Friedman said that inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon, there's a second half of that quote that no one really talks about. He also compares it to if the output of productivity is increased at a lower amount than the inflation rate, then it's inflationary. So he kind of qualifies that. It is the true definition is when inflation is higher than the productivity. So in other words, productivity is usually increasing, usually, unless you shut the whole economy down, but it's usually increasing. And if the rate of increase in the monetary system is on a parallel path going up, then there's no rise in prices. So when Leon and I talk about inflation, I just want to clear this up with the audience that we are just talking about that inflationary aspect. We're not throwing in the productivity aspect of it. So, for example, if productivity increased faster than the way the government was printing money, then prices would fall. Actually, we'd see falling prices. Yes. If the productivity or the creation of money were flat, but productivity declined, then also prices would go up, right? Because there'd be less goods, so there'd be more money chasing less goods. So it would be higher prices in that situation too. So inflation doesn't always equal higher prices, and productivity doesn't always up or down doesn't always equal higher or lower prices. It just depends on the juxtaposition of the two. Okay,
exactly.
So I want to clear that up. However, to make it's simple in my mind, I do exactly what Leon says, and I call increase an inflationary, but that's what it's doing. It's blowing up the amount of money in the system. That's what I define as inflation, and that's what I call inflationary. There we go. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, but your point is valid. Though. You blow up the amount of money in the system, but that blown up amount of money is chasing for your goods and services in the economy, and thus creating the inflationary pressures. But yeah, I think I accept your explanation. Absolutely. Yes.
You know what's crazy about this though is that we have a Fed whose goal supposedly, and I guess it's a dual mandate. It's not the main goal. Supposedly should just be stable prices. Okay, that's what they're literally after, so that everybody can feel good, I guess, about prices being stable in the long run. But then they also talk about too. They have this dual mandate where they have to try to track and keep down unemployment numbers as well. But they literally just have one lever, and they have these two things that are not, directly related to each other. And, so it's just all voodoo as far as what they're actually, doing when they claim that, oh, they're trying to help one, then they're trying to help the other. Well, I mean, you can't control them both with the exact same thing at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah,
So,
I agree. They went off the rails when
yeah.
they came up with that idiotic dual mandate. And, hey, just try to work on one thing at a time, okay, instead of
Sure.
this
Yes.
nonsense.
Yeah.
Because, I couldn't agree with Jason more that having, for one thing, tying unemployment to inflation is ludicrous, just flat ludicrous.
But the bigger point I was trying to get to as well, though, here is that even the main mandate, which is to have stable prices, why do we necessarily want that? I mean, the whole point of trying to become a more productive economy is so we can get more for less, right? And so the idea is, why on earth does the money supply need to keep up with it so that this feels like it's either stable or slightly inflationary, which is,
It's
quite frankly, Milton
It's
Friedman before that.
Keynesian
Yes.
imbecility. Yeah, and you're right.
Sticky wages is
Definitely, they
what
don't
they
even
try
need
and,
mandate number one. All they have to do is go back to 1913 and their original contract, which was simply to be a banker's bank, just to help banks to not fail, so you'd have stability across the banking system. Okay, that's okay if you want to have a central bank for that, and you just gotta print money, and at least to tie it to gold. Give them that one single thing to be a banker's bank, just go back to the way it was in 1913, and maybe we wouldn't have the problems we have today. Maybe there's a better way but anyway, you got to be tied to a gold standard. You can't have free reign, because otherwise you get people like Krugman and Summers um, printing money at will, with reckless abandon, with
Yes.
no holds barred, no limits, and
Yes.
then blame it on the insurrectionists of January 6th.
yeah, the January 6th rioters, which is kind of funny because technically they, if they had destroyed a lot of goods in the economy, you may have actually been able to make a case for that.
Yeah,
But
you
it was
could.
actually the rioters for the rest of the year that were destroying all the goods in the economy.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 Where was the blame for their inflationary pressures back when they were burning
Yeah.
buildings down?
Yeah.
Yeah, the writers of summer 2020, they destroyed so much goods and services in the economy. And none of them ever spoke about it. You're absolutely right. None of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the insanity, and when I talked about, prices going down, we literally see these models. Austrian economists point to this all the time. I mean, you look at the electronics industry, and when you have the price of electronics fall, we don't all, well, oh no, the price of electronics is falling. What are we going to do? We're all happy that we're getting more for our money, and it doesn't destroy the economy as that happens. So I just think we really need to be a little more skeptical about what these people are telling us who claim to be our shepherds on the economy.
For the first 100 years of the industrial age, we went through a deflationary economy, and it was good. We all, our standard of living skyrocketed during those 100 years, and then along came the Fed. now here we are.
Well, the Fed has done and got me triggered, Tim, and I think that's a good segue for your good guys with guns. And by the way, we run this segment just because, there's all these people who want to regulate guns, and yet there are a lot of stories, especially nowadays, where we're hearing where people stand up, use their Second Amendment to actually do the job that the police say they're going to do for us, but seldom do nowadays.
Yes.
Yeah, especially now, for sure. Yeah.
Exactly.
And by the way, that latest one where the old guy with the shotgun, oh, that's really a good one for me.
That'll be a next weeker then, Tim.
Yeah, that's next weeker. Oh my God. First of all, it's an old guy. Second of all, he's got a shotgun. Okay, you're checking all the boxes here. But
Biden should be all for him. I mean, right at the door.
Well,
Anyways,
but he wants you to fire shots off into the air and break the law doing that. Discharging a firearm in city limits. Anyway, this happened in the city limits of St. Charles, Missouri on July 17th of this year. A St. Louis man on a bathroom break at a Quick Trip here shot and killed an armed robber early Saturday. Police said the robber was on a violent crime spree across 3 St. Charles gas stations. The Quick Trip customer, identified only as a 26-year-old man from St. Louis, stopped around 3:20 a.m. at the gas station and gave the address to use the restroom and make a purchase, St. Charles police said in a release. The man was on his way back to his vehicle in front of the store when he saw a black SUV pull up abruptly. St. Charles police on Sunday identified the deceased man. Now we're talking about the deceased guy, Lance M. Bush, 26, also, wow, both 26, of St. Louis. Police said Bush was homeless. Okay. Police would not release the name of the customer who killed Bush, saying St. Charles County prosecutors will review the case first to determine if the killing was justified. And there's a picture of our Mr. Bush. The customer watched Bush get out of the SUV, run into the Quick Trip carrying a backpack, and approach a clerk by the coffee pots, police said. Bush then grabbed the clerk and dragged her to the front of the store while she was screaming. The customer saw Bush inside the station holding a knife to the clerk's throat. The customer got his 9mm handgun from his vehicle, entered the store, and confronted the suspect, police said. Bush, in a show of bravado, grabbed his backpack, told the man, "I have something for you," and walked toward him, police said. But apparently the man had something even better. He fired several times. Bush fell to the floor. The customer and the clerk, who were uninjured, both called 911, police said. Bush was taken to a local hospital where he was pronounced DEAD, police said. What's that spell? Oh, dead. Police said believed Bush was responsible for 2 other crimes just prior to the Quick Trip incident. So they go over 2 crimes. I'm going to paraphrase. He held a knife to the throat of another clerk, 43, and injured her, sent her to the hospital with various knife wounds, non-life threatening, but nonetheless must have not been the best night that lady ever had. Then another one where he broke into a different one and stole a bunch of stuff, which they found in his SUV. And so he's got a bunch of other charges and larceny. He used to work at a what was it, Applebee's restaurant. And he got mad about the final paycheck, and so he busted up the place for $6,000 worth of damages. So real nice guy, but now he is DEAD.
Wow, a real upstanding citizen, I see.
Someone for the Democratic Party, perhaps.
Wow.
I mean, just considering how they vaunt the lawlessness of people in the past burning things down and killing people. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, these are just one incident after another that we're seeing nowadays. And I mean, this is really stuff that is, gosh, I mean, it really highlights the importance of having a Second Amendment. That's it's so important now to self-defense. It seems like.
Indeed. Indeed.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, we don't make the rules, but you got to play by them.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, speaking of crime and kind of some of the crazy bail laws that are going on, let's get to a story. And darn it, I did not pull up a video on time here for this, but so a few weeks ago, the Republican representative who is running for governor in New York, he was out stumping, and he had somebody come up and assault him. He was on a stage speaking to a group of people, and some guy just sort of wandered up, and I guess he had sort of a sharp weapon. I don't want to say necessarily a full-size knife, but it was some sort of a blade, and he he approached him, and then he sort of took a swing with the knife, and Zeldin sort of grabbed him to stop himself from being stabbed, and then a whole bunch of people sort of gang rushed him and pulled this attacker down. Not quite the Dave Chappelle incident that we saw about a month ago, but still, quite a bit concerning. And the crazy thing was that after this attack, he was apparently immediately released on bail. So, or without bail, I guess, because
Without
New
bail.
York is one of those states now
Yeah.
where they're just
Yeah.
simply not requiring any bail. And I guess the guy seems like he might have been really out of it, that he really didn't know maybe where he was or what he was doing. He didn't really have a good recollection, the guy who was the attacker. But to me, that seems like even more of a reason to hold the guy.
Exactly.
I mean, if he's
Dangerous.
violently assolting people and he's not sure what he's doing, then this seems like it's definitely something where, you might want to hold him until we're sure that the threat is gone, or we might have more of these, potentially it'll take a good guy with a gun to stop this guy, which is not something we want to see this eventually get to.
Exactly.
So, what do you guys think about this?
Under New York's under New York's reform, the bail reform, the whatever they want to call it, they charged the guy with attempted assault. And believe it or not, an attempted assault in New York is not a felony. So because it's not a felony, the prosecutors could not ask that the guy be held on any sort of bail. So the judge let him out. The judge had no choice in the matter. They let him out without bail. Now, you just described the guy. You just described all the circumstances. The guy said he didn't even know who the congressman was or nothing. He just went up on stage to attack him for God knows what reason. But this is the problem here. These politicians put these things in place, and then who have to live with the consequences? Us, the private citizens. When this guy, it was a congressman, but still though, he had nothing to do with this guy. The guy just decided that this is the time to stop this guy from speaking. Now, what craziness is this? What craziness is this? But this all goes back to the whole point, the tolerance of lawlessness that is going on in our society, with all of these so-called reforms that is going on, and then the selective prosecutions also that are going on. All of this is putting our criminal justice system at risk and putting the lives of our citizens also at risk. And this is horrible.
And yeah, I think you're saying the same thing basically that Jason was, is that, if they wouldn't have these kinds of lax rules, then then the good guys with guns have to come into play, and we don't really want that after all. I mean,
Right.
we prefer not to be assaulted or robbed or any of these things. So I guess the rule is that if you block the guy trying to knife you and prevent him from injuring you, that's an attempted assault, and the guy gets off. But if you are too slow or too weak or just don't see it coming, and he stabs you with his knife or whatever he has, sharp pointy stick, then that's an assault. And so, but essentially by the reflexive defending act of the potential victim here, actually a victim, the guy gets off. I mean, it's like, seriously, the intent was to injure this person.
Without a doubt.
Let him off because he was unsuccessful.
Yes, exactly.
Well, imagine too. I mean, if this had been one of these Democrat legislatures who had, actual bodyguards with them who were armed.
Yes.
And do we really think this wouldn't have ended without some bloodshed here?
Yes.
If somebody had come at, say, Joe Biden wielding something like a knife, right? Do we really think that, that that's not going to end in some kind of violence, right?
Yeah.
This is just a bunch of supporters of his who jumped to to his defense
Yes.
and pulled this guy down. But man, if somebody had been carrying at that point, it could have gotten a lot worse potentially. So.
No doubt. No doubt.
And that's the whole point of these guys, when there's something this wrong, that's the whole point of having a court and a police system, is to when there's somebody who's literally out there whose potential threat to violently assault people and such, that's when we're supposed to be able to remove that threat so it doesn't escalate into something where we literally have to defend ourselves with deadly force.
But look at what they're doing, though, Jason. Look at what they're doing. Okay, they're undermining the police. Remember this whole defund the police movement, which is still going on at a lower temperature these days. But they want to defund the police. What they're trying to do, they undermine law enforcement. Then they come along with this bail reform, this so-called bail reform. What they're trying to do, undermine the judicial system. So look at everything that we're trying to do to contain criminality is being undermined. Whether it's law enforcement or whether it's the judicial system. They're just trying to undermine all of these things. And who's going to pay the prices? Us. We're going to pay the price.
Yep.
Meanwhile, I must remind the listeners that some guy that didn't assault anyone at January 6th, they're trying to pin a moniker of terrorist on him and give him, 15 years in prison?
Well, that was 7 years is what he was recently sentenced to. That was somebody who wouldn't take a plea. So essentially, and of course the judge said, we're not going to entertain 15 because the terrorist thing is out. We're not going to define these people as terrorists.
But he did not assault anyone, correct?
Not as far as I can tell. Yeah,
he did not.
So a guy just there gets 7 years
because he was armed.
Because he was armed. Yes, exactly.
He was armed. Say he had a firearm on his person.
Yes, he had a. I think he had a.
But it was holstered. It was holstered. Yeah. It was on his person, like you said. It was holstered. But he's gonna go to prison for 7 years because of that.
Yeah.
So he was openly carrying a weapon, something that SCOTUS just deemed was constitutional.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And for that, he gets.
Yep. For making AOC and Pelosi feel threatened, they go to jail for years. But this guy literally physically assaults a Republican representative who's running for office, and you're out on bail or without bail the next day.
Yeah. Okay.
It gets back to the tolerance. Go ahead, Tim. I'm sorry.
What's that, Leon?
Well, you were going to say something. I'm sorry. I cut you off. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to be clear that this is what's going on here.
Oh, yeah. Again, we get back to the tolerance of violence and the selective prosecution of people. This is dangerous to our republic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's about time for our Knucklehead Noise Patrol. We're pretty much near the end of our show, and that's something where we try and find something absolutely silly, which is so easy to find nowadays, to be honest. And in this particular instance, and maybe we can get the visual. So a Yale doctor, Yale medical professor, actually, had recently said, I guess they tweeted out that Biden working through his COVID is actually the face of white supremacy. And the specific quote, let me give it to you. She said, POTUS working while having COVID infection optimizes white supremacy urgency in workplace. Set a bad example for everyone, or sets a bad example for everyone that he cannot rest. I mean, okay, so I can understand this doctor having the opinion that, hey, look, maybe Biden should send a signal if he's really sick. Maybe he shouldn't be out there. Maybe he should take a day or two off. Recover a little bit. But how is that white supremacy? I mean, my God, this is absolutely nuts. I don't know. What do you guys think?
This article puts us in the unenviable position of defending Joe Biden.
Yes, exactly. But to these idiots, everything that does not fit into their little narrative or their little agenda, everything is white supremacy. I wonder what this idiot would have said if Barack Obama was president and he got COVID and he decided to work through that time period. I wonder what she would have said then. Black supremacy? Or, what would this idiot have said then? What would she have said?
I wonder if he did. Maybe he did during his presidency work through a sickness.
Yeah, I'm sure he probably did. I never heard about him being down or out with any kind of thing like COVID or anything like that.
Maybe he worked a little overtime once or twice.
Yeah,
he oversaw a lot of drone strikes on targets. He dropped 26,000 bombs in 1 year. I wonder if he worked a little overtime. Hey, what kind of white supremacy is that? I mean, that's
I wonder, and Tim, he probably had a cough. He probably had a cough when he decided to drop all those bombs and do all those drone attacks. So if he had a cough and he was working through that cough and still ordering the strikes on people, I wonder what this idiot would have called that.
Yeah. Well, for a Nobel Prize winner to be putting in overtime droning people to set a records in the amount of people he's killed with drones is, I guess that's the new definition at Yale of white supremacy. I don't know.
I think that's
makes about as much sense as anything nowadays.
Of course.
Yeah, well, I think we've reached about the end of our show today, but thanks so much for joining us. And until the next time, stay free.
Yes, indeed.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.